I would like now to introduce you to Christine Handy, a wife, a mother, and a breast cancer survivor. Christine released her first book, Walk Beside Me. It's a fictional depiction of her illness and her long road to recovery in May of 2016. An accomplished model in both the national and international sphere, Christine modeled from the age of 11 until she was diagnosed with cancer. Now Christine serves as a spokesperson, speaker, and ambassador for cancer-related causes. Please join me in welcoming Christine Handy.
What happened to my notes? Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Gilda's, and thank you, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, for having me here. Does this work? Okay. I remember the first time I felt the lump in my breast. I was in a shower in a dingy hotel in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts with my casted right arm hanging out of the shower. All I really wanted to do was get clean. For the previous year, I had had 17 different casts on my right arm, which made it difficult to shower and even more difficult to get clean. I had gotten very good at kind of clean by pouring liquid soap over my left shoulder and letting the soap wash down my body. I hadn't touched my breasts in a year. I had skipped my mammogram because I had a PICC line in my arm that was threaded to my heart and an IV dangling out of my arm in an attempt to kill the infection that was eating away at my arm. This particular night, we were at the hotel visiting our son in boarding school. He was 14 years old at the time, in 8th grade. This was the same son I had not been able to visit for 7 months because of the constant surgeries on my arm. Most days prior to being diagnosed with breast cancer, I was either in the hospital having surgery, in bed, or at physical therapy. My younger son, 11 at the time, had suffered tremendously as well. I was unable to cook, unable to clean, unable really to take care of myself, much less my children. This is how I used to dry my hair. If I had gotten a call around 3:30 in the afternoon, I would go into a state of panic, knowing that, one, I had either forgotten to get my son a ride home from school, or I had forgotten to tell him who was picking him up. When he got home, he was so excited to see me. He would shout out, "Mom, I'm home." But I was in bed, barely able to mutter a whimper, "Noah, I'm in bed." The pain in my arm was so great, I had given up food and drinking water in fear I would have to get out of bed and use the restroom. So back to that fateful night in the shower in the middle of nowhere trying to get clean, I decided that I would take that bar of soap and attempt to wash my body. I took that bar of soap and I instantly found the lump in my breast. It was so right there. It was right underneath my nipple. I couldn't believe it. How could I have missed it? I don't recall everything after that shower other than I got out, probably when the water got very cold. I walked into the bedroom where my husband was watching a movie. He was laughing at this movie, and I was so jealous. There was such ease about him. He wasn't worried about the pain in his arm. He wasn't worried about a possible lump. I just didn't think I could give him, "Hey, honey, I think there's something wrong," again, after the year that we'd had. So I cozied up next to him on the bed until I got the courage to tell him what I had found. He said, "It's fine, honey. Everything's going to be okay. There's no way you have cancer, not after what you've been through." But that's what my arm doctors had said, and that ended very badly. The next day, we went to say goodbye to our son in boarding school, but he wouldn't come out to say goodbye to us. He was mad. He was so sad that we had to leave him. I was mad too, because I wasn't sure at that point when I'd be able to go back to visit him. So my husband and I drove to New York City to go to see my arm doctor who had just fused my arm. You see, 1 year prior to this, I had a very simple torn ligament in my right wrist. I found the best orthopedic clinic, the best doctor in Dallas to do it, a Stanford grad. My biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to do yoga for 8 weeks. Months later, an undetected infection, a doctor who bullied me so badly I didn't even recognize myself. I finally went back to Dallas after our trip to New York City. I went to see an OBGYN who sent me to a breast specialist. I didn't tell anybody. My friends and my family, they had carried me for the full year prior to this. And I didn't want to call my mom. She had literally just buried her best friend of breast cancer. She could hardly speak without sobbing. I had gone from being a thriving mother, athlete, and wife to a sickly woman worried about breast cancer and in constant pain. I remember exactly where I was when I got the phone call. It was 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. Can you imagine that? Going through the weekend, waiting? 9 a.m.? Surely they had that information on Friday afternoon. I had woken up at 8 a.m. to an empty house. I'm sure my husband had driven my son to school. I dilly-dallied around the house, unable to get dressed, and then the phone rang. It was the doctor himself, not a nurse, to tell me everything was going to be okay. I trembled, and I asked the doctor one question: am I going to die? He didn't even answer. Eventually, I had to call my son in boarding school and tell him that I couldn't make his parent weekend again. There was a long pause, and as the tears silently dripped down my face, I said to him, "I am so sorry, son. I have to have more surgery." His response I will never forget. He said, "Fine, Mom, it's fine, as long as it's not cancer," and he hung up the phone. You see, he was a 14-year-old kid, mad at his mom's health problems. But he wasn't worried that his mother could die. I was in CTCA at that time, thankfully. I had gone to CTCA because they care about the whole patient, and I knew they would protect me from this point forward. They would help me. They're a community of people. I had the lumpectomy immediately. Then I went back to Dallas. What happened after this changed my life forever. You see, my self-esteem had gotten so low by all the surgeries on my arm and the constant bullying by that doctor in Dallas that I didn't think my life was worth saving. I had already relied so much on my family and friends. I thought they're going to be better off without me. So I plotted my suicide. I had had enough, and my mind was in the wrong place. But I had to wait for my son to get home from boarding school to tell him. But as chance would have it, he got in trouble at school, and he couldn't fly home that weekend. A week went by, he got in trouble at school again. He couldn't fly home. Those delays saved my life. My friends came over every single day and taught me that my life was worth saving, that they would never forsake me, and that God would never forsake me. By the time my son came home from school, I was all in. I was ready to fight for my life, and I knew there was a purpose in all the pain. Those women did stand by me. For 28 rounds of chemotherapy, 17 surgeries, 15 months of treatments, they never left my side. They still carry me today. They became my community. They became my voice until I regained my own. Gilda's Club is that community. Their motto, that you never have to face cancer alone, is what saved my life. I was so afraid to ask for more help and rely on others that I wanted to quit. Gilda's Club is there so we won't quit. We need that support. We need that community. We need places like CTCA that care about the whole patient. My friends and I didn't have that resource, but we created our own. But without that community, without that hospital, without those women's faith in me, without God, I am here, I am alive, I have a story, and I'm stronger than ever. Thank you.